Eddie is filling in for my daughter Kendra, was going to MC this morning. She has allergies, so that's just not going to work. But as Eddie said, we've had some very major hosts in the past. You're going to have Mr. Graves today, which is okay. We're here for a couple of things today. But first, let me just give you a little bit backdrop on who we are for people that are newcomers to our summit here. But DiversityBusinesscom, we do two things. We do two things only. We do data collection and analysis. Okay? We do data collection and analysis. Our data collection is surrounded by trying to get every business on the planet in our repository. That's what we do. We spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of effort, we put a lot of money into doing that. We have about 1.6 million businesses in our repository now. What that data allows us to do is certain analysis. And what that analysis gives us is we can identify different segments, different constituencies, the top and the pretty much the high-end revenue earners. All right, so that allows us to do what we call a Div 500. The Div 500 is diversity businesses, and our definition of diversity businesses is all-inclusive. Okay, it's all inclusive. And that data gives insight to a lot of our customers on who the major players are across different industries. That list is used a lot by our customers, and it's drilled down to, dependent on, segmented in different industries. It's become pretty vital for a lot of people that are in our network. Besides the Div 500, we're able to drill into there, so we can identify the top 100 Hispanic-owned businesses, African-American-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and veterans business. We slice and dice the data lots of ways. All right, so we do data collection and analysis. The analysis allows us to do our Div 500 awards. And what's important about this? Well, at the heart of what we do here is we're trying to have impact. And that impact is surrounded with economic development. And what we do with the top business list, there's about 2,200 companies across the country on the various lists, because we do state and national lists. And what we really try to do is get exposure for those companies. And what this exposure could be in their local communities, getting the word out, identifying them as a significant player, whatever their field happens to be. And what are we really looking for? We're looking for press releases, we're looking for social media coverage. And what we're really trying to do is inspire and motivate other people. We are trying to inspire and motivate other people by the identification of successful entrepreneurs and communities across the country. All right, so what our hope is, and it's hard to put a number on it and see whether it's really working, but someone sitting and reading their hometown paper, and they read about Martha, someone XYZ Corp, and they hear her story. We're hoping that something, I can do that too. I'm going to give that a shot. I see this other woman that's very successful, or this type of business, I'm going to give that a shot. So we're really trying to drive entrepreneurship by motivating, general public. All right, general public, and that's, if you go on Google, I mean, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of references of Div 500 awardees over the 15, 16 years that we've been doing it. All right, so impact is the word that I like to use. We hope for having some impact around the country and contributing to the economic development, particularly for underserved communities. Okay, so we've evolved from being in a different space in over the 15 years that we've been in business. We used to be a supplier diversity tool management type company very early on. We still have some of those products. We still have customers with some of those products. A lot of those products are really antiquated. Their useful life has expired. And I'm talking about the portals that everyone has, you know, the kind of gatekeeper stuff to keep the monkey off your back. When I first got in this business, everybody knows how old I am. So this is 1980. Okay, I've been in the supplier diversity process for a very long time. And I have done very well with the process through all of its stages, through, you know, all of the iterations it's gone through. You know, I believe that we're at a pinnacle that, you know, we're going to see a shift in how we do our business in the supplier diversity network. All right, I believe we're going to see a shift, and there's a couple of reasons why we're going to see that shift. Some of it has to do with millennials, and I'm glad that we have a couple of millennial entrepreneurs that are going to chat with us this morning, just so we can get in tune with how they do what they do, what they're looking for, and how do we include them in our network, because they're very different than the traditional businesses that we're used to getting into the supplier diversity network. I also see it changing because right now, you know, under the globe, we have like everyone included in supplier diversity. We really do. I mean, we've grown from this ethnicity to gender to sexual orientation, veterans. I don't know how, you know, the supplier diversity professionals, you know, can manage it, because it's a lot. Okay, and I'm not sure even everyone tries. How do you, you know, deal with all those constituencies? It's nearly impossible. Okay, because some departments are uno. All right, some have 20, but many companies that are putting in major efforts, you know, only have 1 or 2 people in there, you know, trying to work all of that, you know, and, you know, connect with everyone. It's difficult, because, you know, you have to, you know, the way it's worked in the past and, you know, what's current is everyone belongs to every organization, right? We have all the silo organizations, all the ethnicity organizations, sexual orientation, or, you know, gender organizations. There's a lot of them. They're all good. They all do a great job. They have huge membership. But I think somewhere along the line, I think this is where I see the shift, in that we all need to pivot, is that we have to come under one organization. We have to, you know, if we're truly going to be diverse, we have to come out of all these individual silos, and all the silos have the same processes. You know, everybody does the same kind of thing. You know, you know, the whole kind of conferences, this, that, and the other thing. It's all the same. All right. There's not anyone in corporate America that wears a hat that says women one day, says ethnicity one day, says veteran one day. They're dealing with all of it all the time. And to deal with all these individual organizations, it's costly. It takes your time out of the target, because you're on the road. I mean, supplier diversity, they're on the road, trying to make sure they have a presence with all these organizations. They're all good, they're all great, they all do good things. But I think the supplier diversity professional network needs to start talking about, how do we pull this all into one organization? It's important that everybody has their own identification. But as far as doing business, I can't see that, you know, 5 years from now, that we're going to still be able to, you know, talk a lot about inclusion, but participate in all these silos. I just don't think it's going to work. It shouldn't work. You know, I think we should come of age. Like I said, I was first certified in 1980. That's a long time. And basically, we have done the same thing for all of those 35 some plus years. You know, I'm very good at the history. I've been involved in it, and trust me, it works. It's beautiful. It's been great. But when I'm looking at younger businesses now, they're not going to fit in that same, you know, they're not going to fit in that same mold. And right now, what our data tells us and what people see, but nobody is really making a move on it. If you look at our Div 500 companies, they're all substantial. The lowest number on there, you have to have like 10 million in annual revenue to break into that list. These are all huge companies. They're all highly successful. You know, they're what I call grown-ups. It's not a mom and pop activity. And corporate America uses a number about 100 billion plus that they're spending with diversity-owned businesses. Guess what? On that list, I can rattle off the first 4 or 5 companies that are way over 10 billion. Worldwide Technology, 7 billion plus. Software House International, 4 billion plus. Act 1, 2, 3 billion plus. We can drill into the top 10 companies and find out that more than, it's about 15% of the total spend that people report. So we really don't have that much impact because the distribution is all at the top. The top 500 companies, if we aggregate the number, and it's available for anyone who wants the data, you're going to find that more than 50% of all what we do, all what we spend, is rolled up into the top 500 companies. Now, I know when we started this, and we continue to talk about, we're trying to have economic impact on companies that, are typically owned by people from underserved communities, but we're really not drilling down anymore, okay? And there's a lot of reasons for that, and it's nobody's fault, all right? Because we're all metrics driven, right? Supplier diversity professionals, they get, this is a number, run out, charge, get it. They run out, charge, and they exceed it. They do a great job with the goal. I think the goal's wrong. At this point in time, I think the goal is wrong because we are not having any impact on the businesses that really need, a little bit of push. The grown-ups are okay because the reality is the lowest number on that thing, I don't care what industry you're in, if your annual revenue is $10 million, in the worst, industry, you're going to bring to the bottom line 7%. On average, people are going to bring 12% to the bottom line. So I really don't see why we continue to worry about companies that are owned by individuals. And Gene, you're going to do a flip side on this, but that's okay because I'm going to cover myself before I end. All right? They're grown-ups. Nobody makes personally less than $1 million a year. That's a fact. Okay, we got plenty of people, they make $5, $10 million. They make more than the CEO of Time Warner, a lot of our diverse-owned companies. That's a fact. And when they're sitting on the other side of the table from you, and you're having that discussion, and your revenue is $1.2 million, those are the companies that need help. If you're doing $50 million in revenue, you got to let these companies graduate. Okay, you really need to let them graduate. They're grown-ups. They've already proven themselves. Do they still want to push? We'll take every marketing opportunity we can. Right, Gene?
Absolutely.
We will take every marketing opportunity that's provided. But, to get the country really, moving, we can't give like all these kind of political, kind of statements and stuff. We can actually do something. Just by pivoting and focusing on other businesses. And those businesses are going to be below the threshold of $5 million. I know we can't work with mom and pop because this is corporate America and you got, strategic sourcing, you got a lot of stuff. It's not easy. So I'm not suggesting that, you can drill down and for people who don't really have capacity, get them into the queue. It's not going to happen. Those are not the customer bases for certain companies. But I suggest those companies that are between 1 and 5 million, those are the ones we need to focus on growing. They've proven themselves in the marketplace. They've been in business 7, 8, 9 years, right? They're good at what they do, but they cannot, find a side door to get into Fortune 500. Because of how we're structured. Supplier diversity really can't get them in, right? All the low-hanging fruit has been done, staffing and all that kind of stuff, right? So your jobs are really difficult now. And I'm talking to the supplier diversity professionals. The low-hanging fruit, we've taken care of for years. The big contract numbers, we've taken care of. The low-risk stuff with big spend, we've done that, right? We got a whole slew of companies say, I spend $1 billion a year plus. And it's true and it's factual. But I'm not sure we're impacting any communities at all. Auto companies, they can talk as much as they want about spending 20 billion a year. Conditions in Detroit, I mean, they're turning around now, but I mean, it never really had any impact on Detroit. That's a lot of money. But the fact is, a lot of those contracts went to diverse-owned companies with plants in Mexico. Right? It really did not have impact in the communities that we are trying to develop. And we do have some, we have some contracts that, because I'm in the middle of this stuff, that pop up that have zero impact and they look great. Zero impact and they look great. I'm at a conference, a friend of mine, they're in staffing either one or they're out in California. They're running a nice business, 5-6 million a year. Life is good. I see them a year later. How's it going? We did $250 million last year. What are you talking about? How's that possible? You don't go from 5 to 250 million in a year. But they did. They did. And it was a simple matter of taking a contingent, all the contingent workforce spend at a major company and running all that spend through a diverse-owned company. And what their job was and their responsibilities and their operation was to collect all the billing data, all the invoicing data and all that kind of stuff, and basically perform an accounting service. Get a big check, pay all the companies, and there's over 100 contingent companies in this company. They didn't make any money on it. They weren't even paid a percentage. They were paid an administrative fee. How many employees did you have? Well, we probably 20, 30 more additional hours a week. Zero impact. $250 million in spend. I'm sure somebody was waving a flag at, but it had no impact. So we have to get those things out of the equation too. All right? And, there's studies out there and, numbers are numbers and people use them for what they want. But they're totally misleading, all right? Because the baseline is wrong. So you cannot take a number and say, well, we spent $50 billion here, and this is, we drill it down and this is the impact we had. We created this number of jobs. It's not right, all right? You can do it and you can have all the charts and the data and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, the assumption is wrong, right? The hypothesis is wrong, so it's really meaningless to be talking about how, impact, from that type of analysis. All right, so what I'm asking today, particularly of the corporate people, is, you have a lot of meetings, you have a lot of groups, to start to talk about what are we really doing? What impact are we having? Where are we going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, with developing companies that need to drive, the economics of the country, right? We cannot have 40%, 50% of our population undereducated, underemployed, and still have the same standard of living. It's not going to work. We have to look out there and look a few years ahead and say, how are we going to cut this off? How are we going to stay a world-class nation? The only way to do that is to get more people from the bottom up participating in economic prosperity. Not easy, but we're spending a lot of money. Corporate America, it's an incredible amount of money they spend, the amount of effort they put into doing this. I'm just saying that if we make a shift and focus on the mid-range companies, not the high-end companies, we're going to have a lot more impact. We're going to have identifiable impact. And I'm pretty good at this. I can remember starting with 2 employees, 3 employees, 5 employees, 200 employees. It didn't happen overnight. But using a supplier diversity process, it worked. Right? But there was no prime source when I started. There was no strategic sourcing. There was no sole sourcing. You know, if you're good, you can get in the door and, you know, you can work your way up. A lot of that came to the end. As soon as we start offshoring, outsourcing, prime suppliers, it really eliminated a lot of diverse suppliers, particularly in the technology space. I mean, we're going to hear from Mr. Wadey, who's done incredible things during, you know, tough times. But I'm going to tell you, in the mid-'80s, we had 100 Mr. Wadeys. We did. We had more than 100 African-American guys and gals in IT doing extremely well. By year 2000, you know, a lot of stuff happened. I could probably identify 3 or 4 in the country that are significant. That's a problem, right? We're not getting 35-year-old hotshots out of corporate America saying, I'm going to take my chance in whatever it is I know, whether it's technology, accounting, whatever they're good at. They're not jumping out of a corporate job like we did in the 80s, taking that risk, building a company. And the ones that do, it's very difficult. It's nearly impossible. 30 years ago, you can do it, bootstrap yourself up and take it slow and you'll get there. You can't walk up to an IBM, you know, and your revenue is $2 million. They can't have a conversation with you. It just can't be done as a practical matter. So we should probably start spending a lot of time on the traditional kind of stuff we did, are still doing. It's not impactful, right? Particularly when we get, you know, conferences with 1,000 people, 1,500 people. Come on, what I'm telling you is the truth. It's all rolling to, nobody's going to take a chance on an unknown commodity. Your job depends on it, so you can't even do it, all right?